It is so good to see y'all. I'm glad you came out. It would have been a bummer for me to drive over here and y'all not be here. Well, come on, 3 hours to in East Texas. Boy, I was telling them earlier, I was 3 hours from Houston, 3 hours from Dallas growing up. I live in Tenaha, Texas. Anybody know where Tenaha is? All right. The only reason you know where Tenaha is, two reasons. I realize this is being recorded. I'm willing to take the risk. You either knew something about high school football in the late 90s. We were one of the more successful programs over there in East Texas. Small school, but successful. Or you got a ticket there. And if you ever get stopped in Tenaha, make sure you tell them that you know me and they'll double it. So don't worry, no troubles whatsoever. I'm thrilled to be here to talk about Texas Superstar plants. I'll kind of let you know a little bit about who I am. She did an excellent job of introducing me. I'm always interested to hear what that introduction is going to sound like because I got to be reminded what I do. Sometimes I forget. But I come from Tenaha and I come from King's Nursery that my great-grandfather started growing strawberries out in the middle of the sand. We have sugar sands in my little part of East Texas. And not far from the red dirt of Nacogdoches and places like that, but we have sugar sands. And this is about the early 20s, and those are strawberries out there. And everyone thinks that this is my great-grandfather, and well, you should, except for it's not. We have no idea who this person is. Most likely an ex-convict, but nonetheless, it's okay. And you'll notice no child labor laws. None of that stuff mattered. But he realized after about 5 years that it was not going to be profitable to grow strawberries anymore because everybody else in Tenaha started doing it too. And so they were putting those strawberries on the train. They weren't selling plants, they were selling the fruit. They were putting them on the train and sending them over to Shreveport, Louisiana. And that was a good thing to do for a while. He then eventually got into fruit trees and roses. And so we sold fruit trees and roses until we actually closed last year. Oh, everybody says, oh, it's okay. It's not a problem. My mom, I promise, is not saying, oh. You know, family businesses are difficult at times, and my mom, it was time for her to be grandma, and I got a chance to go over and be professor, and so it all worked out in the end. But nonetheless, this guy, that is my great-grandfather right there, and he grew fruit trees and roses and really sort of moved us in that direction. That is sand, and that is my great-grandmother Katie, and you'll notice we had tons of arborvitae, and it was a great thing. It was the King Nursery, not King's Nursery, the King Nursery, where the name of the firm indicates the class of the stock. It don't get no better than that. We took it off of all our business cards because we said, that sounds old-fashioned and kind of maybe prudish or something, I don't know. And anyway, we put it on our t-shirts for 100 years, and everybody said, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard. And of course, for us, we're always wrong, you know, about marketing and all those things. The things we think are not cool are, and the things we think are cool aren't, and it's okay. That's my granddad. He passed away in 1988, which meant that I knew him. He was a great horticulturist, just probably of the 4 generations of us, the most pure horticulturist. What's a pure horticulturist? Commercially, it means this, that he's going to grow those plants whether you buy them or not. And oftentimes he did grow them, even if you didn't buy them. And so he was a great grafter, a great propagator, and sort of gave us all the bug to be propagators. This is he in his native state. Watering his plants, and so that's the granddad that I knew. That's my grandmother. She's 95 next month. She was still getting up into flower trucks. The new part of the business was the florist. That was 1923. And but my grandmother was still getting up into the trucks. This was just about 3 years ago. She's not doing that anymore. She's over in the nursing home in a nearby town, but she's still just as spry as she ever was mentally, and we just love her to death. I wish I was made out of what she's made out of, although I don't know what it is. This is my dad. The truth is, my dad, he wanted to get as far away from horticulture as he possibly could. He hated the nursery. Whenever my dad's customers would hear me say that, they would prickle up on me and they'd say, "How dare you say that about your dad?" I was like, "Yeah, he was just my dad. It's not like I would know or anything, you know." He did not care anything about it. He didn't want anything to do with it, and he went off to go get a political science degree over at Stephen F. Austin. He was going to be a lawyer, and then he decided to be a banker. And he came home one week after doing his banking job for about 2 years and did a landscape job with my granddad, and on Monday he turned his 2-week notice in and was at the nursery for about 40 years before he passed away. He was a great horticulturist. I wish I could tell him just how good he was, because he would get around guys like, well, to be honest with you, he'd get around guys like me who had PhDs and get a little intimidated, but he knew 10 times more than most of the PhDs that I know, because he had his hands in the dirt, and he was a great horticulturist and a great propagator. As I mentioned, my grandfather, he passed that along. In fact, my dad used to tell me, he said, son, I was pretty sure I could root number 2 pencils. And of course, I tried. But I'll tell you this, the problem is not getting that thing to root. The problem is reproducing the erasers. That's the real issue that we have. But anyway, I'm still working on that one. I grew up in that nursery. That's my sweet mama. She worked out there. She's the hardest working person I know, even to this day. And I mentioned she's getting to be grandma now, which is great. And that little blonde-headed dude was me. And I loved all the plants, and I loved the chance to be over there, and I loved everything about it. And so, in fact, because of the nursery business, I love rainy days, because that meant Daddy had a chance and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm kind of backwards in my thinking, but nonetheless, really, really great place to grow up. I knew quickly that I was not going to go far away to school, because Stephen F. Austin had a tremendous horticulture program, especially at that particular point in time. This is me as the outstanding senior in 2004 in horticulture, which meant I was the only senior in 2004 in horticulture. How many people know this guy right here? You know Dave Creech? All right, if you haven't been up to, she mentioned that I was associate director. I'm an assistant professor, but I was an associate director for the SFA gardens, the arboretums up there, and they have 130 acres of gardens, and of course right now the azaleas are absolutely drop dead gorgeous. And so if you get a chance to go to Nacogdoches, you got to do it. It's absolutely fantastic. Well, this guy right here is, he's responsible for all of that, and really a mentor of mine, although I do like to make mention that, you know, he taught me how to breed, and when I say that I mean plants, because you know, we're sitting here, anybody ever seen this plant, Amorphophallus titanum? All right, the corpse flower, right, which smells like death. Yeah, that's right. We, at this point in time, Texas had not bloomed one for about 30 or 40 years, and so we had news companies from Dallas and Houston and Austin and everybody coming to see us. We thought we were hot stuff, and you know, it was fun stuff. Anyway, I am an Aggie. I got a master's and a PhD from Texas A&M, but my uncle and cousin played football there. I was born and bred. I've got maroon running through my veins. Anyway, Stephen F. Austin didn't ever fiddle with that, didn't ever bother me. My mom and dad graduated from there. My granddad went to school there. I love it. It's my little local school, and I'm really proud of it until this happened. All right, University of Texas comes through and buys SFA. All right, SFA now belongs to the UT. All right, so if you want to score at home, in 2024, I was paid by King's Nursery. I was paid by my wife, which is always a good thing. I was paid by the University of Texas and Texas A&M. I'm not sure anybody's ever gone through that. But anyway, it was a good year. But anyway, that right there, just because Dr. Creech is also an Aggie, all right, and so no self-respecting Aggie does that unless he's getting a paycheck from them. All right, so what people noticed is that I just totally quit listening to anything he had to say and all of these things. And I'd go around Texas telling everybody this, and he said, the staff there at SFA Garden says, you're making him really kind of a grumpy old dude. You know, can you be nice? And I said, sure, I'll add a slide in. He's outstanding in his field. All right, so it's no trouble. I went down to A&M and I figured out, you know what, hey, there's a bunch of nuts down there and there's a bunch of pecans too. And I loved my time there. Lots of great faculty, a lot of people to learn from. My favorite part about that was the students. These kids, I still stay in touch with many of them to this day. Some of them I still work with. And as you mentioned, being a teacher, the students are what you do that for, you know, and that's one of the things that I absolutely adored about that. Until on the back of my tests, one of my tests for my medicinal plant class, I started getting stuff like this, and I thought, this is brazen. You know, I mean, I still hold your grade in my hand, which they weren't worried about it. But something about this bothered me more than anything else. And now, I don't know if anybody knows this guy right here. That's Greg Grant. All right, he's our Smith County horticulture extension agent. He's also been a dear friend of my family for about 35 years and a mentor of mine, although I don't like to tell people. But notice, this is what bothered me. All right, and I didn't even realize it. Anyway, all that being said, I work in Overton, Texas now. Where is Overton? It's about 25 miles southeast of Tyler. It's a long way from anywhere, and it is the kind of place where you go to the grocery store and you don't even have to get out of the car to get your chicken, all right? People think I didn't make this up. It really happened. And so anyway, people have been trying to catch that thing for years, and it's pretty crafty. All right, let me talk to you about the Texas Superstar program. The Texas Superstar program started in about 1989, and they called it the CMAP program, and it was started because of this gentleman right here, Dr. Jerry Parsons, who was a state extension specialist out of Bexar County in San Antonio. Great horticulturist, but really and truly a great marketer. He just knew how to lead people into the plants that he thought they ought to be led towards, and he was really, really quite good at that. He was a character, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But anyway, CMAP, C-E-M-A-P, Coordinated Education and Marketing Assistance Program. So basically what they decided was in 1989, the nursery industry was selling a bunch of plants that were good in Chicago, good in Indianapolis, good in Raleigh, North Carolina, but not particularly good in Texas. All right, and so that's a problem. And ultimately, this Coordinated Education Marketing Assistance Program was going to go to the nurseries and say, look, we have plants that are going to be better for you. We have plants that are going to be better for your customers, and we think that we can get them to you, you'll like to grow them, and it'll give you an edge. All right? And so for many years, that's exactly how it happened. Now, I mentioned that he is let's see what this is all about here. I mentioned he's a character. Let me just kind of sort of take you through this. All right, this is, he had a program called The Weekend Gardener down on one of the local television stations there in San Antonio. Not sure how it stayed on the air because he wound up doing stuff like this, hanging from trees, eating poinsettias live on the air to prove that they weren't poisonous. He said, it's not poisonous, it's not real good as lettuce, but it's not poisonous. And he was right. He said, nothing's wrong with me, it's no trouble at all. You know, Jungle Man, he did Jungle Man, you know. Bear Buddy, he was out there with his Bear Buddy, I know. Mr. Potato Man, all these things. And so, if I insult you today with anything, just know it's his fault. Because through 2 generations, now 3 generations of horticulturists, we've all kind of had fun with it. You'll notice it just had a lot of fun doing stuff that probably shouldn't have even been done. Also up here in Dallas, Dr. Steve George was a big part of that initial push for the Texas Superstar program. He eventually moved more toward Earthkind, obviously, and the Superstar program and Earthkind sort of diverged. But they certainly worked together for a long period of time. This was one of the initial CMAP sort of plant trials. I know this photo is not all that impressive, but this was about mid-90s trial in lantana. All right, and of course we still go out and say, hey, you ought to grow lantana because they're really, really good. We also then had other trials that sort of came along, not necessarily as part of the Texas Superstar program, but they certainly functioned as such. In 1994, Dr. Brent Pemberton started our trials in Overton. Dr. Brent Pemberton was in Overton for about 40 years, or 38 or 9 years. And so he started our trials out there. If you can still come to our trials, in fact, my last slide today will tell you when and where our trials are. So, you know, I drove to you. You can return the favor. On June the 25th, we'll be out in the middle of a cow pasture looking at petunias. And it's for those who are afflicted. But that's you. I don't know if you know this or not. So this is a good thing. That's my sweet mama, and that's us out there checking out whatever plants came from various plant producers around the country and around the world, to be honest. We had plant producers from Japan and plant producers from Chicago, Ball, Horticulture, and all of these people from various places sending us lots of different plants to trial. At this point, it was Dr. Pemberton's program, and he did that all the way until 2022. And ultimately, we think it's a really appropriate way to test and to sort of determine whether these things should be Texas Superstars or not. That's Greg Grant, and I should warn you, I forgot to tell you every time that I was going to show his legs. You need sunglasses when you do that, but ultimately, he's got this, this is 2022, and the last trial before we put ours on last year. And so again, this is our trial last year. Loads and loads and loads of plants out there for you to see. Maybe not any that you've not seen before, but we had various things. I had some perennial snapdragons over here, which I was really excited about. And I'm moving more in the perennial, herbaceous perennial world. As she mentioned, we breed herbaceous perennial plants, and so we're really interested in that. There's really very few people who are trialing perennial plants. Why? Because it's not as easy as trialing annual plants. It's a 3-year process rather than a 1-year process. And so ultimately, if that's something you're interested in, you should come out. It's a fantastic place to be. We had, as I mentioned, Vinca and all these other things. But the reason why we do that, right, is because, well, for East Texas, we want to be able to say, hey, well, you can grow this, 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 and this. But in reality, for the Texas Superstar program, it certainly works as well. I was mentioning this earlier, and as we say this quite often, right? You've got, and I know I'm not pointing exactly in the right place, but DFW, Houston, San Antonio, Austin. You make a triangle like that, you've covered, what, 65% of the population of Texas, or 70, or whatever it is. If we stay here much longer, it might be 75%, you know. It's happening pretty quick. And ultimately, if a plant will grow in that triangle, it's got a chance to be a Texas Superstar. Now, whether or not that plant can grow over here in my little hometown, you know, I've got 973 other people to garden with there in Tenaha. She mentioned having one stoplight. We do too. You know? And so ultimately, East Texas is also, you know, people say, well, I'll tell you this. In my classes, I would always ask, do I have any East Texans here? And the reason why is because, you know, if I said, anybody from DFW, they'd fly that hand up like nobody's business. Anybody from Houston? Yes. You know, anybody from San Antonio? Absolutely. Anybody from East Texas? Is yeah. I said, well, I thought you said you were from, you know, Tyler. I said, well, that's Northeast Texas. Well, I thought you said you were from, you know, Jasper or Beaumont. Well, that's Southeast Texas. I said, well, my name is Dr. Andrew King. I'm from Tenaha, Texas, and that's East Texas. It don't get any easter than that. All right, and you can put that hand up proud. Why? Because, yeah, maybe it's not quite as affluent as other parts of Texas, but it's green. It's God's gift to Texas, all right? It could actually grow plants over there. Daddy used to say, get the green up and the brown down, and you're going to be okay. And ultimately, that's kind of what we have. So that's criteria here for our Texas Superstar. It's really pretty easy, but we give you 6 steps. It's got to be attractive. Well, how about that? We're ornamental horticulturists for the most part. All right, that plant's got to be attractive and useful. It's got to be unique. Well, really what that means is it's got to be able to live through our summer. All right? Now, that's not true for everything, because we do have a number of Texas Superstars, especially recently, that are more cool season plants. All right? So that's got to be able to make it through our winters, which is becoming tougher all the time. Number 3, it's got to consistently perform well for most Texas consumers, and I already showed you where most Texas consumers reside. Number 4, it's got to be pest resistant as pest resistant as possible. I don't even know why I left the deer part in here. Let me tell you. Here's my deer theory. All right, you got 10 plants in the yard. All right, which ones are deer resistant? Well, these 9 right here are, because they really like this. All right, when that's gone, this one's no longer deer resistant. All right? And when that one's gone, this one's not either. People would always be like, hey, can you give me the deer-resistant plants? And I said, well, do you like rosemary? You know? And somebody the other day was like, actually, my deer love rosemary. And I was like, well, I'm out. I don't know what to tell you. One thing I should say as well is that a horticulturist in Texas is absolutely insane if you think about it. If we try to work the entire state, which some of us have to do, because this area over here gets about 80 inches of rainfall per year right now. This area over here gets about 6. This area over here can freeze in early October, mid-October, and this area over here most likely won't freeze at all. All right? And so somebody calls in and say, well, what's the best plant for me to be growing? And say, well, where do you live? Well, I live in Texas. And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. Number 5, must be able to propagate and mass produce. Our nursery industry is absolutely a vital part of this. I could produce the absolute best plant you've ever seen in your life. You could want it like you want your next breath. And if the nursery can't propagate it, it doesn't matter. All right? Because you can't get it, which we're going to talk about that some, unfortunately. That's kind of a common theme. And then number 6, it's got to be so attractive in a container that it sells itself, because a lot of times people don't pay attention to our perfectly crafted narratives. All right, the selection committee looks like this. 2 weeks ago, I was made a co-chair. Paul Winsky is in Houston, Texas. Dr. Larry Stein's in Uvalde. Dr. Arnold is in College Station. David Rodriguez is the county extension agent on horticulture down in Bexar County. Russ Plowman is our lone person outside of the Texas A&M system. He's at Texas Tech and in Lubbock, of course. Dr. Dan Lineberger is our former department head, and he's in College Station. And Dr. Greg Grant, he used to just be Greg, but now he is Dr. Greg Grant, and he's in Tyler. And so these guys will get together and we'll talk about our trials and determine which superstar plants are, well, what plants are superstars. Let's talk a little bit about the plants. I can't go through all of them because there's just too many of them. We are actually in the process of removing a number of them because of the thing I mentioned earlier where you can't get a hold of some of them, which makes you all real happy, by the way. But anyway, the very first plants that we really sort of focused on for superstars were bluebonnets. And this is appropriate as I drove in, and I know you've all been enjoying them on the highways. I know we all would like to enjoy more of them on the highways, but man, they're gorgeous where they are. And of course, in 1986, Texas had its sesquicentennial celebration, which is easy to say. And for that particular celebration, Dr. Parsons decided we're going to make a red, a white, and a blue bonnet so we can put them out there and have it for that particular celebration. Didn't quite for the sesquicentennial, it was about 20 years later. And some would argue that that's not quite red, but to an Aggie, we like that color. All right, and so ultimately, through a lot of roguing going in and taking out lots of seedlings, they wound up with a good white, with one they called Alamo Fire, and of course they already had some really good blues. And this picture's not great, but you can see those are all bluebonnets. All right, and so let me tell you the best part now. All right. This maroon bluebonnet is very difficult to get a hold of at this point in time. Why? Because I mentioned all the roguing, all the taking out of the seedlings. If you put a white or a blue seedling in here, the next set of seedlings that comes on, there is a smaller percentage of maroons, and then the next set of seedlings that come on, there's a smaller percentage of maroons. And so ultimately, if you don't continue to rogue those whites and blues out, you're not going to have maroon for very long. And so that's one of the things. I think there's maybe one seed producer in the state right now. So it's a difficult thing. But if you can get a hold of some, you can be a seed producer, right? So you get them to come up, and you just make sure that there aren't any whites or blues around, and you'll have maroon ones for a long period of time. They're very tough, and they're just as at home here as any of our bluebonnets. We know we have multiple species of bluebonnets, and in 1971, the legislature made all of them the state flower. All right, at one point in time, it was just the one that we find around this area and into central Texas. But over in East Texas, we have Lupinus texensis variety subcarnosus, which is our sand bluebonnet. And to be honest with you, probably the ugliest one, but it doesn't have the white tip on the end. People say, that's not a bluebonnet. I said, well, it is. But anyway, so that was these are superstar plants. They're still plants that we consider, bulletproof virtually. And of course, if you can get those things scarified, get good scarified seed, get them in the ground in the fall, in the spring, you'll enjoy them. As I mentioned, we have a lot of different superstar plants. There's 26 annuals, 26 perennials, 9 tropicals on our website. They're listed as per annuals. That's not a term that I use very much, and not a term that I notice that a lot of people use, but I'll talk about what that means when I get to that. 9 woody shrubs, 7 trees, and 21 specialty plants. You'll notice that as we get into some of the more perennial crops, the woody shrubs and the trees, that number shrinks down quite a bit, because again, finding one that's going to grow all the way from north to south it gets very difficult. All right, there's going to be a test. Okay, I would like for you to know all of these by the end of our time together. No, I'm not going to be able to talk about nearly all of these, but the annuals are, again, fairly easy for us to make superstars, because often they will just absolutely do exactly what we think they should do wherever they are planted, or for the most part in Texas. And as I mentioned, Dr. Pemberton had his trials for so many years, and so we were able to look at them, and we're still doing that today in our trials in Overton. You'll notice Angelonia, as I mentioned, the bluebonnets. You'll notice the multiple bluebonnets. We're kind of reducing that again. You'll notice larkspur. You'll notice a number of these things, but let me talk to you about a few of them. Laura Bush petunia. I mentioned to you Greg Grant. Greg Grant, don't tell him I said this, but he's one of the most talented horticulturists I've ever met. And he's a dear friend and a mentor of mine, and I'm very appreciative of all that he's done for me. This is one of his selections. And he kind of kidded around with me the other day. He said, I said, why is it called Laura Bush? He said, well, because Dr. Creech came to me once and said, hey, Laura Bush is coming to campus. What can we do? And we had this petunia, and it was a seedling that comes off of this thing. All right? And anyway, it's fantastic. It's a great plant. And he had one called VIP that had very small blooms. All right, I'm going to give you, this is not totally scientific, but this is my opinion. In petunias, typically the smaller the bloom, the tougher the plant. All right? It's not always true. There are some pretty small blooms out there that are duds, but a lot of times you'll find small bloom petunias have some real hardiness and some toughness and may make it through the summer. Laura Bush is fairly decent size and also has that toughness. It's also got violet pollen and all that. That's not really that important, except for to know that sometimes you'll find a Laura Bush petunia for sale, and if it doesn't have a violet eye, it's not Laura Bush. All right? So Laura Bush is a really good one. It's a grower. All right? It's not going to sit there and be real well behaved for you necessarily. It likes to go, but I think you use the term thuggish. And I said, well, hey, if I had to sit out there in 120 degrees, I'd be thuggish too. So there you go. These guys, that's Greg right there in a much younger state, and Dr. Parsons out there selecting these Laura Bush petunias. And absolutely gorgeous. This is Conoclinium, or Greg's mistflower. This is Greg's mistflower, not Grant. G-R-E-G-G, and that one will go too, but an incredible butterfly plant, of course, which I'm sure many of you are growing. But it will go, and it will maybe skip the sidewalk a little bit and go a bit more, and so you kind of keep your eye on that. We'll talk about some of these others, but there were a number of Texas superstars in this list. Vinca. Vinca is an incredible plant because it loves our heat. All right? It loves our heat. Even to this day, there still just aren't that many annuals even that love our heat, and this is one of them. This is what I'm going to tell you. You're going to go to your local nursery in about a month, and you're going to have that fever, and you're going to be like, I'm ready to plant everything. It's hot. It ain't hot enough for the Vinca yet. All right? Wait as long as you can. My little problem out there in the middle of East Texas was I had one shot at most customers, and so I had to sell them Vinca like in April, but in reality, the Vinca weren't really ready until all my customers were gone. All right, why? Because if we put our Vinca out too soon, we were going to wind up with disease issues, namely Phytophthora. All right, and what that is basically you come into your yard one night, the headlights shine upon your Vinca, and they're gorgeous, and you wake up the next morning and you go out there and they're like this. And it's like, what happened? And Phytophthora is an aerial bacterial issue that can, fungal issue, excuse me, that can get in there and take care of your Vinca. Now, Cora is, as Texas Superstar, this is a series. So each and every one of these Vinca right here are Cora Vinca. All right, it is a series of Vinca, and they are Texas Superstars because of their disease resistance. In fact, now you buy Cora XDR Vinca, XDR, Extreme Disease Resistance. All right, and so that is a fantastic choice if you are interested in annuals. And of course, I mentioned medicinal plants a little bit earlier. From this, we get two chemotherapy drugs, vincristine and vinblastin, which are kind of encouraged me to create that class in the first place. My wife is a nurse. She's actually a certified nurse midwife now. I have to upgrade her every time I talk about her. But I always thought it was kind of an interesting thought that there are people all over the country, especially the Southeast, who are unfortunately heading into their oncologist office to go in and receive a treatment that comes from plants that are in the flower bed out in the front yard. And so that's kind of an interesting, and a lot of times horticulture is not getting its just due in terms of how important it is in our medicines and things like that. That's really not today's talk, but nonetheless, it comes to my mind. This is not a Texas Superstar, but Cora Cascade Vinca. It's exactly it's a very similar series to Cora, but you'll notice the cascade part. We're talking about Vinca that aren't going to grow any taller than about 6 inches tall. And they're a great ground cover. They are not a Texas Superstar. The Superstar Committee has not made them superstars, but I'm telling you, they are, in my mind, just as good as the Cora XDR series is. So keep an eye out for those guys. Purslane, when they first made Purslane a Texas Superstar, they made UB Purslane a Texas Superstar. I have not seen UB Purslane for sale in a long, long time, but Purslane is still on our list. And this is 2 Purslanes that I grew last year in my trials. This is Rio Grande Citrus Crush. All right, and even though I've never been real fond of orange, all right, I'm an Aggie and I'm a lumberjack, and that means Texas and Sam Houston have always been at odds with me. But I do love this color combination, and I also love this one, Raspberry Lemonade, all right, which gives you, this has got a little more raspberry than lemonade, but trust me, there was some lemonade in there last year as well. So really, really great choices. And of course, Purslane is fantastic, especially if you're a morning gardener. If you're an evening gardener, Purslane kind of lets you down, right? Because it shuts up and it won't really bloom all that much. So it does depend on when you're in the garden, but it's a great plant for us. All right, let's talk about perennials. This is, again, one of my favorite groups of plants. And just a million of them in there that we think are absolutely fantastic. If I had to choose one genus of plant to work on, by the way, let me just say this out loud. I'm going to show you our website in just a bit. All this information is on texassuperstarplant.com. All right, so if I'm happy for you to take photographs. I'm not trying to tell you not to do that, but if you don't get it, it's on the website. All right, so you can go check that out. But anyway, if I had to choose one genus of plant to work with for the rest of my life, it would be salvia. Salvia. All right, anybody know how many species of salvia there are? 1,036 at last total. We use about 15 of them. All right, now that's not to say that all of them are going to fit here. They certainly don't. Some of them are not cold hardy. Some of them are dog ugly. You know, there's lots of stuff that keeps us from growing these plants, but there's some of them that certainly will fit in here, and we just hadn't got to them yet. But we've made a number of them Texas Superstars, and we'll talk about some of those guys. All right, here is Salvia leucantha. That's Mexican bush sage. It's been a great plant for a long, long time. Tough as boot leather, heat resistant. I've never seen much of a cold problem. I mean, we had 0 degrees 6 years ago, 7 years ago. and it stunted a bunch of that stuff. But 0 degrees is not, it's not our norm, I hope. So, anyway, all right, right next to that, you've got, of course, Turk's Cap, which is hard for me not to talk about, but we'll skip it, and I think I can talk about it in a bit. This is Lindheimer's Muley, Muhlenbergii, Lindheimeri. I've got 4 or 5 of these out in front of my house in my landscape, and it's the only plant that I have planted out there that my wife is in favor of. All right, everything else, she says, what'd you do that for? Why do you like this? And I don't understand. Why can't we have a pretty yard? I keep telling her, I said, the plumber always has leaks in his house. Okay, can you just understand this? This is something that I'm gonna be working on for a long period of time. There's your Mexican bush sage. Again, you say it looks different than the other one, and indeed it does. There's a number of different variations of that. Some of them have a little bit more white on the tip, but a fantastic plant, Salvia leucantha. And then this is Duranta, which we've also made a Texas superstar, although it's got some cold issues in some cases. All right, there is Henry Dulberg sage. Henry Dulberg found on a central Texas grave site, happened to be Henry Dulberg's. I don't know about you, but the folks in my cemetery don't water their plants very much. And this thing right here is particularly tough. They also, of course, found Augusta Dulberg. But I tend to favor Henry just because of the color, and I think it's a bit tougher in my experience. That's mealy cup sage. And again, if you don't have that one, you got to do it. Your butterflies are saying, please get me some mealy cup sage, a native for us. This is Muy Grande hibiscus. I was just telling some folks earlier that Muy Grande is one that you can't really get your hands on. Greg Grant helped to select this. Dr. Moy down in San Antonio, along with Dr. Parsons and Greg, bred this particular thing. It would grow to 10 foot tall, and it was really seedy, and so that was one of the issues with it. He gave me a selection or a seedling of it that was sterile, but ultimately it didn't really catch on either. But in this, of course, you got some salvia, I think that's Garanitica over there, but maybe mealy cup as well. That right there is phlox. Okay? And our old-fashioned phlox paniculatas are still great choices for our gardens. Now, they're not the toughest things in terms of catching on, but once they caught on, they're good. All right? So I always had customers who would say, well, my phlox didn't make it, but they never said after the second year, oh, my phlox died. All right? So get it in there, especially your herbaceous perennials. If you can get them in the fall, to get them into the yard before it gets to be 112 for a good amount of time, that's always a good choice. Or if you can get them early in the spring, which is hard because they're hard to grow early in the spring. They're hard, I mean, they're late to, so right now if you find a phlox out there that's grown naturally, it's going to be like this tall, all right? If it's grown in the greenhouse, it may be like this, but that's then can sometimes cause an entirely different set of problems where you have to go and harden them off and all those things. But that, our various phloxes are absolutely fantastic. I love we have Victoria and a number of other ones here on our list. Turk's Cap, people say, hey, this thing's too common. It's supposed to be here. It's a native, all right? It belongs here. And so I would reject the too common thing. If you don't like the red, the typical red, that's okay. You know, there's pink. All right, we have Pam Purrier. This is another Greg Grant selection. He also released one called White Lightning, all right, which is white. Some of the time, I think that's why he calls it White Lightning, because in the flash of lightning, it's white, and then all of a sudden it turns a little bit pink. But anyway, great choices. And then, of course, in Turk's Cap, there's some variegation that happens as well. There are very few variegated Turk's Cap that are actually very stable, but they're fun to play with. All right? All right, perennials. I mentioned that I would sort of go over this with you. I called them tropicals earlier. Really what they describe this as are tropicals that we use as annuals. All right, so we use them as annuals. We don't expect them to necessarily come back, although a number of these do, right? Gold Star Esperanza, for much of the state comes back year over year. Firebush, Hamelia patens, year over year comes back often. Thrialis certainly will come back, and sometimes Caesalpinia will come back. All right, what do these things look like? Gold Star Esperanza. This is another Greg Grant selection. You kind of get the theme here. But this particular plant, Esperanza, is one that is kind of tough to grow properly. What do I mean? It is easy to grow, but it's oftentimes hard to bloom, and it won't start blooming until like mid to late September or early October. Well, you've only got a month or so to enjoy it. Gold Star was selected so it would bloom from a small plant and bloom throughout the summer. All right? I'm telling you right now, you can go to nurseries to this point, and I'm pro-nursery. Please don't take me in any way to say anything other than that. I'm very pro-nursery, but realize that you can go to a nursery right now and buy a Gold Star Esperanza that is oftentimes not a Gold Star Esperanza. All right? And so there's been some serious confusion in naming these things, but the way you can know, and this may not help you, but if you're there in the summertime and that thing's been outside for any length of time, it should either have buds on it or blooms on it. And if it's not, I would just skip it. It might be Gold Star and just have had some environmental issues or whatever, but I wouldn't buy it because I wouldn't know. Does that make sense? All right. Tapioca, this is one that's is very difficult to find. All right, it's not super hard to propagate, but people have kind of just quit doing it for some reason or another. I always kind of treated it as it's not a spider mite magnet necessarily, but it oftentimes had spider mites earlier than anything else did. So when I started seeing spider mite on it, I knew I was about to have a problem. But of course, this is just cassava, but just happens to be the variegated form of it. And it loves, loves, loves July, August here. I mean, it absolutely loves it. Give it a little bit of moisture, and that thing's going to be just as happy as you could imagine. And it does something that nothing else does in terms of the bold foliage that it produces. Now, this is Hamelia patens right here, Firebush. And that happens to be one called Lime Sizzler. All right? The funny part is this. All right, in East Texas, we call that variegated. In College Station, people just think that's sick. All right, chlorotic. They just think that thing needs some fertilizer. But that's a really, really great plant, that Lime Sizzler. This is how your Hamelia patens, the traditional one, looks in your yard. All right, a nice lush green with that real sort of firecracker-like blossom that pops out. And again, butterflies, birds, hummingbirds, bees, all absolutely adore it. Great, great plant. Loves our heat. In a severe winter, it can go down, but for many of our winters, it comes back year over year. All right? Pride of Barbados, Caesalpinia. This is a plant that you see used like crazy in San Antonio, Austin, and down further into South Texas. Sometimes in the wintertime, it never even goes down to the ground. For us, for sure up here and in our area as well, this thing's going to die to the ground every year. And in a severe winter, it won't come back. But it's worth it. I mean, you talk about just like tropical. I can smell the tropicalness of this thing. Oh, I love it. All right, but anyway, fantastic. But thank you for helping me, though. I appreciate it like so much because oftentimes I will take the word that you come up with. And so my students always used to know this. Let's just pitch some words out at them and see if it works. And it'll be all right. There's little ruby alternanthera. Some people say alternanthera. Alternanthera is a neat plant, certainly a contrast plant, because a lot of them have that really nice sort of burgundy if you're not an Aggie, or maroon foliage if you are. All right, woody shrubs. Again, we kind of begin to pare this thing down. Notice knockout rose. Some people are absolutely allergic to that, but nonetheless, it is a plant that you can grow and feel really good about it. Here's my Belinda's Dream. Hard to beat Belinda's Dream. How many people got Belinda's Dream? Anybody? I'm up here in Rose Rosette country, I know.
I have one in Michigan.
Oh, well, fantastic. Well, let me tell you my Belinda's Dream story. I don't have time to do anything else. I'm not going to finish, so I might as well just enjoy it. As a lecturer at Texas A&M, I was on the faculty there, and I was doing plant sales for the horticulture club twice a year, and realizing that I was enjoying that part of my job just about as much as anything else. So bells started to go off like, hey, you know, you could go home and do this. This is kind of what you do. And so I eventually decided that. But one Saturday morning, we were out there for our spring plant sale, and this sweet lady was up there. And she comes by and she says, how are you doing? And she introduces herself. Anyway, I said, you know what you need? You need a Belinda's Dream Rose. She said, no, I do not. And I thought, well, this lady's been sweet the whole time. What's her thing? I said, I'm telling you, you really? She said, son, I'm telling you, I don't need one. My department head came out and she said, I cannot recall her name exactly, but it was something like Sissy anyway, she says, Dr. Lomberger says, hey, I see you've met Sissy. So yeah, I have. I've been telling her she needs a Belinda's Dream Rose. He says, no, she does not. I said, what is the deal? She said, son, my daughter is Belinda. And Dr. Basie, who was the breeder of this rose, bred it on my family's property. I don't need a Belinda's Dream Rose. I got plenty of them. I chose the one person in the world, all right, that would not work on. But I'm telling you, I don't care who you are, if you don't have one, you need one. And I realize that the rose rosette is a real issue for sure up here. In fact, I've got a little bit of work that I'm going to go do after I leave here this afternoon on some Belinda's Dream around here. But I'm going to tell you that if there's one rose to me that's worth it, this is the one. Now, this thing is a 1992 introduction. It functions as an absolute antique. Smells good, looks good, all right? And in terms of toughness, it's got it. So great, 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 great plant. Lynn's Legacy Cenizo, Texas Sage. We're up here in an area where you guys can certainly grow Texas sage. We grow them over in East Texas, but they kind of limp along because we get a little bit too wet, a little too humid. But I'm telling you, I think they're quite happy over here, and Lynn's Legacy is a great choice. Lynn is Lynn Lowry, for whom, Texas Superstore is kind of around because of Lynn Lowry, Benny Simpson, and Barton Warnock, these three guys. The guy up here in North Texas is Benny Simpson, and that would be a great study for you. By text, people say, hey, this thing gets out of bounds. I think we need to have a discussion about what is aggressive and what is invasive. This is not invasive, all right, in my estimation. Somebody says there's some water courses I've seen it go loose on. Well, you know, we've never had this discussion about Chinese tallow. All right, there's more than just water courses where Chinese tallow goes. So if this thing's aggressive, I can understand it, but it's been around here for 200 years, all right? And I think it's still worth a mention. This particular one's called Violet Mist. Why do I mention it? 3 foot tall. You can use this in your herbaceous perennial border. LeCount is still my favorite of the blues or purples. That's going to have the longest bloom chains, and LeCount, that's pronounced like C-O-U-N-T because it comes from LeCount, Louisiana. If you've got a problem with it, talk to the Louisianans. All right, this is Vitex Bark, which I think is something that we don't ever talk about. And this is one called Flipside, which even when it's not blooming, it's got that for a backside of the leaf. And when the wind comes through, absolutely gorgeous. We just made American Beautyberry a Texas Superstar, and well, it should be. Birds, bees, deer, you name it. We can make jelly out of it. Fantastic plant and a great choice for us. All right, let me get through this real quick. Trees, deciduous hollies. Ilex decidua is a great plant for us. Shantung maple. All right, Shantung maple is a maple you guys can grow up here for sure. All right, because we grew it in College Station. This is my favorite one. It's in Overton. All right, I've kind of watched it grow up. This is about 20 years ago. It's not very big. Now this is it, all right? Now this is what I love about it. That's December 5th. Now you say, wow, you better say it quick though, because that's December 8th. All right, December 9th, 10th, 12th, 13th, and I didn't have the heart to go any further. Chinese pistache. Now this thing can sometimes get a little bit out of bounds, but we're trying to get you a male version. You know, there's male and female Chinese pistache. If we get you a male version, I think that's one that you should be paying attention to. Specialty plants, we do vegetable trials down in San Antonio. The rodeo tomato, that's Dr. Stein and David Rodriguez. All right, so if the tomatoes are going to grow down there in San Antonio, they're good for Texas. The rodeo tomatoes, they're often really good choices. I'm telling you right now, if you want a gold standard for big, moderate-sized tomatoes, go with Celebrity. I still tell everybody, try Celebrity first. There's a cautionary tale, Tycoon. That's one we got everybody excited about. Now you can't get the seed to save your life. It's gone. All right? BHN 968, that name just rolls right off your tongue, is a great plant, very, very sweet sugar tomatoes. And Ruby Crush, they're also good choices. Here is a grape that you can grow. It's a table grape. We still have some improvement on grape, but this is as good as we got. It's a good one. Southern Sensation Seedless grape. Alliteration, please. All right, Southern Sensation Seedless. And that's Dr. Moy, who gives us Arctic Frost and Orange Frost and Moy Grande Hibiscus. He passed away, unfortunately, not all that long ago, but he was a great breeder and ultimately. All right. If you have questions about these things, there's your brochure from 2020. We're coming up with a brand new brochure, but it won't be out for another 6 to 9 months. So you can go to TexasSuperstar.com, and this is our website. Click on Superstar Plants. If you're looking for a retailer, we've got some information there. But anyway, if you've got any questions other than that, you can always just email me. We're trying to help you pick the right plants. You know what I mean? All right. Andrew.king@ag.tamu.edu, flowers.tamu.edu, and June the 25th, we'd love to have you out to Overton, Texas, so we can sweat together in the morning and then enjoy a little bit of time together in the afternoon. Thank y'all for having me. Oh, sorry, let me leave that there.
Dr. King,
yes.
I wanted you to know that there is a group of people in this room that was probably 30 years ago that we visited your nursery.
Yes.
We were in Nacogdoches. Who are you? Yeah, see, some of us are still here and kicking. But it was a very odd thing because we were in Nacogdoches for a couple of days and visited a nursery there, and they were saying, why are we going to this little teeny town to a nursery?
Yeah.
It wasn't on the way home,
no,
but we enjoyed it. And
well,
it's nice to see you grown up.
Yeah, well, you're going to make me cry. I don't do that very much.
Her name is me.
Well, family, cousin. I was 12 years old when y'all were out there. Thank y'all. That's so sweet.
I have a shade garden. I have a shady yard. And I noticed that a lot of your plants are growing in bright sunlight.
For sure.
Turk's Cap is about the only one that I recognize that I can grow. So I will go to your website, and are there some shade?
There are a few.
Plants?
We certainly don't choose, because if you think about the shade plants, they're not the ones that are going to pop off the shelf and just grab you. We have a number of coleus that we think are better than others. We're going to make, I don't know if you guys grow much ligularia here, Farfusium. This is a tractor seat plant, leopard plant. It's going to be a superstar this year. That's hot off the presses. You're not supposed to tell anybody that. So the answer is yes. Go on there and see if you can find some good shade plants. And if they don't work, then just quit. Sorry. The shade gardeners are my favorite gardeners because they really want to do it. You know what I mean? You got to really want to do it, and I love a good shade garden.
I hope you'll come back sometime and do a talk on medicinal plants.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
Well, I sort of mentioned it. I'm a huge salvia fan, and all of them, right, fit into that category. Salvia comes from salvation, all right? And so all of these monasteries and everything all over Europe, they were mandated to have a certain amount of salvia there so that they could treat various illnesses and diseases and things like that. One other thing that is always interesting to me, a lot of people don't pay attention to the Latin, but if you have salvia, for instance, salvia officinalis, you see the specific epithet, the second part of the Latin name, if it's officinalis, that means that at one point in time, or still, it was used medicinally. All right, so it came from the officinal, from the sort of like the, what's that place where we get our medicines from? Pharmacy, thank you. Yeah. I've only got so many words in me, and I've already spit them all out.
Sorry.
Thank you, yeah.
Since you mentioned Ligularia, I wanted to bring you, I talked to you at the TNLA conference in January, and I brought you some seedling Ligularia that I grow in my garden.
Fantastic.
So I want you to try to grow this
I
in
will.
Overton and see if we can get this on the superstar list.
Yes, absolutely. What are we going to call it?
I call it Tony's leopard because that's my name, and it was born in my yard. So I don't know
All right.
if it's I had a bunch of different kinds of Ligularia, some from Plant Delights and, named cultivars. And
Yeah.
this seedling popped up, and it may be a hybrid, doubt it, but it's probably just parentage.
Yeah, perfect.
Species. So anyway, I've got some started, and
That's
then some more
awesome.
seeds. So.
Thank you. That's awesome, thank you.
My question has to do with pollinators, and not only superstars, but when you're doing things in trial gardens,
Sure.
what part do pollinator or judging a plant for its attractiveness to native pollinators?
More than ever now, right? As I sat out there in the blazing sun and had 90% of customers come up and say, do you have anything for butterflies, birds, or bees? But I will tell you, we do not have a formal, designation
yeah.
just yet. We certainly have the butterfly down there. This is good for pollinators.
Right.
But I mean, there's loads of other perennials that we could be using and should be using that should be superstars, if for no other reason than they're fantastic. I mean, I'm thinking porterweed and plants like this,
Okay.
So absolutely.
Thank you.
So
That's
it's coming, I think.
important.
We'll try to make it, hurry.
Okay.
Here.
Hi, this is a little bit short, but I can do this. All right, so I'm going to take a question about shade gardens. I'm going to take your comment about the vincas and their relationship to anti-cancer.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a big word out there, and I'm going to give you a book and ask for a superstar. There is a study of plants and their use in medicine, anthroposophic, that's the big word, anthroposophic medicine. It's ancient. As a part of that, as a cancer survivor myself, I have been injecting myself with mistletoe for 6 years, 3 times a week. And in addition to that, I have been injecting myself, well, for the first 5 years, not anymore, with Helleborus 4 times a week. Both of these have a synergistic effect on the immune system, kind of upregulating it as well as decreasing inflammation. And both of them have wonderful anti-cancer properties. Mistletoe has been used in Europe for over 100 years, side by side, and in fact in Germany it's covered as standard of care in their hospitals. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, well, I would love to read that.
So anthroposophic medicine, big, huge, enormous,
yeah, we can't
massive.
say it, but hey, that's
Anthroposophic
Got it.
medicine. The book that I highly recommend to everybody, Dr. Nasha Winters is a pioneer in naturopathic oncology. She saved my life. I'm trained by her. I now work in this field. She wrote a book called The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. That's one. And then she co-authored a book simply titled Mistletoe. And that book does a spectacular job of explaining how this plant medicine actually works within our body. So I think you might find that one especially interesting.
I would love to read it, absolutely.
And then circling back to my request and your request, Lenten roses, Helleborus, are spectacular in the shade. And I would love to see more, because I'm just addicted to them.
Yeah, you know, in Tenny Hall, when we would try to have hellebores out there, and then people would come back the next year and say, those things didn't really make it for us all that much, you know, they just weren't that tough. And ultimately, I've got some in Overton, and I'm becoming more fond of them. So I think over time they've gotten a lot better. But anyway, yeah, I'll certainly be looking at that.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right, thank y'all.
What a great program. Thank you so much.